Hi, this is Beth Outram with SmartBridge. This is to introduce a short series of videos on revenue recognition and profit recognition as it pertains to Oracle's JDE Release 9.2. Profit recognition and revenue recognition are Oracle's response to the FASB-YASB rulings on what point in time revenue can be recognized. It is the Accounting Standards Board's desire that these regulations make it easier for people to analyze financial statements between and among companies of different industries. This introduction contains both the accounts receivable and sales order setup and examples. In another segment, we'll have contract and service billing. In another, we'll talk about profit recognition. And last but not least, the future of revenue recognition as it pertains to JDE. The primary difference between revenue recognition and profit recognition is that revenue recognition is invoice-driven. That means that any module within JDE that initiates an invoice has the possibility of that invoice going through in the revenue recognition process. Profit recognition is based on the job and job costing. So its drivers are on the job master, and there are modifications to make that happen. Because there is so much to cover and so little time to do it, let's go ahead right now and go to our accounts receivable and sales order portion of this segment. So in this segment, we're going to talk about the universal settings, and then we're going to talk about the settings that we need to do for accounts receivable and sales orders, since they are very similar. And we also will take a look at the revenue recognition workbench. So the first thing you need to do is P03B216 that turns on the revenue recognitions either by company or universally. We have selected by company, and we have set up company 1. Then the next thing is you're going to set up your trigger hierarchy, your dates, and your trigger configuration. For accounts receivable invoices, these are the choices that you get. A word of warning, the customer category code really is the customer master category codes in accounts receivable, not the ones in the address book. So this is our hierarchy that we've chosen. And then we did our dates. And here's where we tell it the 2 dates that we want the system to use to calculate the eligibility date based on the number of days that we have put in the trigger configuration. And I will show you that next. Here's the invoice trigger configuration for company 1. As we said, category code, we have 930, and the customer number 222110, and the number of days between the invoice date and the GL date would be 5. We've said yes to include it into revenue recognition, and even if your 5 days falls within the same period, I want it to go into revenue recognition. So then I'm going to skip over to, I put in my invoice, and then So I have put in my invoice, my accounts receivable invoice, and now we're going to go to the revenue recognition workbench, and we're going to see that invoice. This is our revenue recognition workbench, and here is the invoice number that I put in for my customer 222110, company 1, for $15,000, and it is ready to be recognized. Another thing that I want you to understand is that if this invoice is not posted, you cannot work with this line, and this invoice is not posted. So before you post it, you must before you work with it, you must post it. Then it's simply a matter of recognizing revenue, and since there is no cost of goods sold associated with an accounts receivable invoice, we're going to just do recognized revenue. The setup for sales orders is basically the same, and so we're going to go over that very quickly as well. So back to our setup for revenue recognition, we're going to look at the sales order trigger hierarchy. So this is our sales order trigger hierarchy. And as you can tell, we have more fields here for us to use to narrow down our search and determine which things will be included in revenue recognition and which things will not. You can see that we have chosen ship to, carrier, mode of transport, and the ship to category code. You want to make these as generic as possible, so you probably wouldn't want to use something like the ship to number, but the ship to category code could well be used, since you can then designate your customers or remove it from your customer without any change to the trigger hierarchy. And then we set up our trigger configuration for sales orders. So here is our configuration for sales orders. Here's our ship to number 222100, carrier number 60097, our mode of transport, and our ship to category code, which is different than we saw the one in accounts receivable invoices. It can be different. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And our number of days. Also, we want it to be included in revenue recognition. And if, for example, let's take this one, if we uncheck that, that means we want to exclude it from revenue recognition. Here we have it included, and again, if it's in the same period, include it in the revenue recognition process regardless. And here is our sales order invoice that we've done. That we created a sales order, we put it through the sales order update process, and it created our invoice, and here it is in our revenue recognition workbench. Again, the revenue recognition status is not recognized, it's ready to be recognized. And our cost of goods sold is also here and not recognized. So you can see, for example, my accounts receivable doesn't have any associated COGS with it, but my sales order does, and that is all automatic. The system does that for you. So that's a very quick overview of accounts receivable invoicing and sales order invoicing and the revenue recognition workbench. Just a word, there is a UBE that will recognize this in batch for you, and I would recommend that if you are going to use this process, that you go ahead and set up a scheduler version so that you don't have to remember to come in here and manually recognize this.